honor to introduce Miles Burdine, President and CEO of the Kingsport Chamber, who will introduce our speaker and moderator.
Thank you. Andrea, out of all the introductions I've had and all the honors I've received, that was the most recent, so thank you very much. And it's review time. Thank you. I'm just kidding. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Michael Jack Quillen, and I was looking at his resume. It was interesting. He's got all this experience, all this education, all these opportunities, all these things, all his entrepreneurship, and you get to the very top of it, in addition to his where he lives in Bristol, Virginia, but it says experience highlights, present, and it says retired. So if you can, you should. Mike, I'm happy for you, very, very happy for you. But I do want to say a few things about Mike here. I'm going to put my glasses on and read. He's the chairman and founder of Alpha Natural Resources. After acquiring Massey Energy, Alpha Natural Resources became the third largest coal company in America with approximately 14,000 employees. You say that again, 14,000 employees. And a market cap exceeding $8 billion. I have to repeat that, $8 billion. The company has a production capacity of 140 million tons per annum. Alpha Natural Resources is the largest exporter of met coal from the U.S. and the third largest producer of met coal in the world. Now, that's quite remarkable. And that's just up the street here in our sister city in Bristol. Mike also has a Master of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Virginia Tech, and he has a BS degree in Civil Engineering from Virginia Tech. And he's got a lot of honors, a lot of distinct rewards that he's received, but I've noticed that Mike is a family man, so I guess I have to tell you a quick story about his daughter, Hunter. I warned her I was going to do this because I got an email from her yesterday, as a matter of fact. Hunter used to work for us at the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce. Now, Hunter came up to me years ago when I was running Fun Fest and a couple other programs, and she said to me, "Hey, Miles, I want your job." Okay. She was Miss Kingsport at the time, and lo and behold, a couple of years later, she ended up getting that job and ran Fun Fest for us. But something I was very proud of Hunter, I raised $3, I'm still raising $3, and Hunter demonstrated something to me one time that I'll never forget. I take great pride in learning from people, learning leadership skills from people that you wouldn't ordinarily learn from. And Hunter, who was maybe 25 at the time, she came around the corner at the old Chamber of Commerce building, and Karen Job, our receptionist, was sitting at the front desk, and Hunter happened to be exceptionally well-dressed that day. She had an important meeting, and she was well-dressed, and Karen says to her, "Wow, Hunter, you look like the senator's wife." And Hunter said something I'll never forget, something that I taught my daughters over these years, and something that I noticed little Madison sitting back there. You listen to this, Madison. Hunter's response was, "I don't want to be the senator's wife. I want to be the senator." I'll never forget that, and I hope you'll never forget it. To those of you who have daughters, please pass that on to them. I'm going to close by saying to you, Mike Quillen is the husband of Debbie, and he's the father of Hunter, Matt, and Chris. And I asked him earlier about naming his grandchildren. He said 14. He couldn't remember them all, so I'm not going to do that. But please join me in welcoming Mr. Mike Quillen. Somebody's left something for him up there on the chair there, too. I wonder what that is. Now I'm going to introduce to you Mr. Jim Bailey. If I can find the right page. Jim Bailey has spent more than 4 decades as an award-winning journalist, news anchor, news manager, and writer. Most recently, he collaborated with Kingsport's WKP-TV to produce the Made in Our Hometown series on manufacturing in our area. Previously, he spent 10 years as anchor and managing editor of WGHL-TV in Johnson City, and has years of similar positions in Fort Wayne, Indiana. In addition, he has also worked in his native South Carolina, Tampa, Florida, New Orleans, Richmond, Virginia, Lexington, Kentucky, Portland, Maine, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. Jim is a veteran of the United States Army and has also worked in public relations and public affairs, and as an ordained minister, worked with the Worship Network. He's been recognized with awards from the Department of Defense, the Associated Press, Women in Communications, the Press Club of New Orleans, among others. Last year, he was named one of Milligan College's Leaders in Christian Service Award recipients, of which I know he is very proud. Jim is active in numerous charities, including the Salvation Army, Friends, Habitat for Humanity, Children's Miracle Network, Muscular Dystrophy Association, American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, American Red Cross, Lions Club, Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of America, and he serves as a deacon for First Christian Church in Johnson City. Jim graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in broadcast journalism and is a distinguished honor graduate of the Defense Information School. In January 2012, he and his lovely wife Jackie will celebrate their 30th anniversary. They have one son, Jay, who lives in Largo, Florida, where he works with the St. Petersburg Times. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Jim Bailey.
I thought Miles had left me an early Christmas present, but this lump of coal, I understand we're going to play Stump the Speaker now. I understand just by looking and feeling this, you can tell me what kind of coal it is.
Well, I mean, that part's easy. It's bituminous, but that's splash name off Swartz Creek in Buchanan County, Virginia.
So you know where it came from. Now, how can you tell that?
Well, I'm bluffing a little bit, but I mean, actually, when I was actively mining, I could look at the different seams we mined and either taste it, smell it, or look at it and pretty much tell you what seam it was once you see it all the time, because they all are different. Coal's not just coal.
You were founder of Alpha Natural Resources only 10 years ago, but that was not your first entry into the coal fields. You've been at that for quite a while.
All right, I got in, again, I'm a resident, born in Gate City and lived there almost my entire life. Moved away and was working in Richmond, Virginia as an engineer for the highway department, and my dad was an insurance agent. Debbie's dad was a high school principal. Fred Smith, which was a contractor for Tennessee Eastman, decided to get in the coal business and called me up, and because I had a professional engineering degree, said, come down and work on this surface mine during the day and do engineering at night. We'll pay you $1,000 a month. And I said, I'll be home next week. Dad got out in 9 months, and I've been in it pretty much 40 years.
What, at 53, was it, convinced you that you wanted to found your own company? And why did you think that would be a good idea at the time?
Well, again, first off, I want to say congratulations to all the nominees tonight. And to all businesses, and particularly the small businesses, and thank you all for what you do. So, and good luck on the awards tonight, but everybody is a winner. Having spent a considerable amount of time, Pittston, which had changed their name to Brinks, had been for sale for about 3 years. I had 16 years with Pittston over time, and I told them if they ever decided they really wanted to sell the company and keep the legacy liabilities, a lot of the retirement and medical union liabilities, I'd be interested in it. And after 3 years being for sale, the market wasn't very good. They called me up and said they'd be interested. Well, I had 4 employees on Jackson Street in Gate City, Virginia in October of 2002, and they agreed to the deal. And the company I was with at the time, I thought would finance the deal, and I took the deal to them after Pittston agreed to sell it to me, and they said, you're nuts, that we're not going in that. They've lost money for the last 7 years, and nobody makes money in the coal business. And then I went around to raise the money to do it, and went to hedge funds and private equity funds and a variety of mezzanine financing and all those places that banks were out of the question. They weren't going to loan me anything. And they asked me, I went to a private equity firm and made a pitch, and they said, well, where's your business model and all that? And I said, I don't have any, but I have faith in the people. And they threw me out and sent me back home. But in a few weeks, they called and said, let us send down some 25-year-old guys with laptops, and we'll sit down and figure out whether you really know what you're doing or not. And they did, and they put the money up. And that's how we got started. We started with 4 people in Gate City, and as Miles said, it's 14,000. Regrettably, it's about 13,000 now with the downturn. But I never expected it to be anywhere near that. In fact, kind of a little humorous story is as I retired from that company last May, I went to Verizon to change my cell phone from a company cell phone over on my personal cell phone, and went through that, and they said, well, do you want to stay on the guarantee? And I said, and I thought for a minute, and I realized what they were saying. When we formed the company, I had to give them my Visa card to get the first 2 cell phones. they never took me off. So I was guaranteeing probably 3,000 phones, which I'm sure exceeded my capacity, my monthly capacity on that credit card. I said, yeah, I think you ought to take me off. And I went immediately to the CFO and said, get me off of that guarantee on that Verizon bill. But it's been remarkable. But as I tell everybody, it's all about people. It's about people and money. And sometimes derogatorily people say, well, it shouldn't be about money. But in reality, all of you all as business people know, money is a factor. It influences everything we do in our own personal lives and what we have to do in business. But it's really about people. And I just have been so lucky to work with a lot of talented and great people and stayed out of their way.
You mentioned how volatile the coal business is, and even the bankers said you don't make any money in coal, but you were able to. What was your vision? What enabled you to look at this business and say, I think I can make a success of this?
Well, the one thing, and I tell people this honestly all the time, timing and luck have a lot to do with success. There's a lot of smart people that haven't been as successful as other people, so timing was huge. But I had faith in the people. I mean, it humbles me even today to think about, when I was forming this company, we didn't have anything. We didn't have office furniture. We didn't have a checking account. We didn't have anything. But I called up people I'd worked with and said, how about coming and working for this company and we'll have fun. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I can't guarantee you that, any kind of severance package if it doesn't work or layoff or anything else. We're just going to try it. And people actually quit legitimate jobs with futures and came to work for Alpha when we first started. And, then it just kind of built on itself. And, in that industry and a lot of industries, once we got a certain size, we either had to be an acquirer or we were going to get bought. So, probably been about a dozen acquisitions since that time. But, we went from 4 employees in October 2002. By May of 2003, we had 2,700 employees. So, but the fun part of that was we consolidated a lot of companies, but we got to bring on people. There's a lot of talented people at all the companies we acquired, but we were able to bring people on with like-kind personalities, and it just kind of built from there that we've been able to carry forward the business motto of the golden rule, just, treat people the way you want to be treated in any situation. And you can really apply that, I think, in good times and bad to how to run a business. And, we certainly emphasize safety, and we emphasize treating your employees right and environmentally, and all that stuff goes to the bottom line.
You mentioned environment. You acquired Massey 4 years ago, 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago.
2 years ago, and that made Alpha Natural Resources the 3rd largest coal company in the world.
No, in America.
In America. Well, you'll get there.
Yeah. 3rd largest metallurgical supplier in the world.
In the world, okay. People were important to that. How do you evaluate a company when you're looking at it and think, this company has the right assets for us to go in and make a wise investment by taking it?
Well, that one was a little different than a lot of the rest of them. I mean, that one, we had 7,000 employees at the time. They had 7,000 employees. We were about the same size. And we were a little bit concerned at the time that which culture would survive and which culture would be the surviving culture of the combined companies. And, we thought we could do it. We had done it in the past with other consolidations, and we were able to, and I think they have achieved that on the cultural side to continue the business model that Alpha has sustained since it was formed, with bringing on 7,000 brand new employees and integrating them into your philosophy.
What are some of the advantages that Alpha has had, in particularly mining in this part of the country, which I understand is, for a number of reasons, probably more difficult than some other areas? Well,
we've been mining around here for 150 years, so and you don't mine the hardest ton first, you mine the easiest ton. So the seams that are being mined today are pretty difficult to mine. I get asked this question all the time: how many coal reserves are out there? Well, we know physically how many tons of coal are out there, but tell me the price and I'll tell you whether we can actually mine it or not. So there's economic tons and there's reserve tons. But I think just recognizing that, and we use this philosophy that corporate doesn't dictate things. Corporate works for the people that are out there getting the coal out of the ground, processing it, putting the rail car, and getting it to the customer. And our job in management or upper management is to provide them the resources to do that to the best of their ability safely. And and everybody needs to understand that. And, I've always said, and actually I give a picture of some dirty hands with a rag to everybody that comes and works at corporate office to put on their desk to see who really pays their check. And I'd say when the air conditioner's not at the temperature you wanted, or you've had to work to 7 o'clock at night or something, look at those hands, and that's the guy that's really out there every day in difficult conditions. But I get a little bothered by maybe how particularly outside this area, how the media portrays a coal miner. But they're the salt of the earth. They're the Sunday school teachers, the Little League coaches. They live in brick homes. It's implied that they do this because they can't do something else, or if they could, they would do something else. But once you've done it probably for a year, you're probably in it for life. The camaraderie, it's not something everybody wants to do, but there's just a lot of loyalty to the guys that you're in there in that kind of environment working with.
You talk about the dirty handkerchiefs, and you can obviously spot the coal a mile away. You've been down in those seams. You talk about the high dollar ones that are hard to get to. You've been in some pretty small seams too, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's the smallest one?
Well, I've probably done every job in the mine there is to do, and I kind of believe in that philosophy. The smallest I've ever been in was our splash dam mine, which is 25 inches. I actually worked for 18 months in our upper banner seam, which is 29 inches. So, you go in there for 8 to 10 hours a day, and you never are up above 29 inches. Now, there's some interesting stories about that. You got coveralls on and all this equipment. You can really learn to control your bodily habits, because it's kind of interesting how you handle that in 29 inches of anything. That's as high as it gets all day long.
I guess you're not going to describe that.
That's all I've gone beyond probably the limit.
Let's talk a little bit about the cost of getting coal out. Many of the regulatory problems that the coal industry faces today is making that more difficult to do. Is it making our coal industry less competitive here?
Well, on a global basis, without question. But I think that's true about every manufacturing process on the globe, is that because we as Americans demand rightfully the right environmental standards and the right safety standards for everybody that works in that industry, no matter what that industry is, and that's not true across the globe. I've probably been in about every mining region in the globe, and there's some pretty disastrous situations where I wasn't even comfortable to go into the mine in certain places around the world. So, I think we just accept that. We try to do it with technology and efficiency to be competitive. Fortunately, the coal quality we have in the United States is pretty much the premium quality coal in the world. We've been blessed with that, so that does help. But I think that's just something we have to adjust to. Now, on the domestic side, it does make it very difficult, particularly for the smaller companies today, to survive in that type of environment.
Energy Secretary Chu has said that clean burning, efficient coal burning power plants could save coal if they came to the point, because they would be more economical to operate than wind or solar or some of the so-called recapturable. How do you think?
Well, I think the one thing that we all need to understand is that in energy or electricity, when you flip that light switch in America, there's only 3 base loads types of electricity generation. That's coal, natural gas, and nuclear. Everything else, all the renewables are maybe 2%. So they may triple, but that would take them to 6%. We're going to grow, maybe at 1.5% electricity consumption a year. Natural gas has had a technological change, and they're in the driver's seat right now. But I think he's right. Coming from an engineering background, I think we're going to solve these things with technology. We're not going to politicize it or mandate it or make people's behavior change. You saw the video. It's very as I look at these things and measure, because we as an industry, it's either we're in the news either because of an environmental situation or a safety situation. But when I look around the world and recognize that the lifespan in the United States with economical energy, say around 80, and you go to these countries that don't have electricity and their lifespan is 40, that's a huge opportunity for economical energy to change people's lives, and it's going to happen. There's 4 billion people over in the Asian countries, and you take China, India, Korea, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. We've got 330 million. They're going to burn coal. because it's the most economic thing for them to do. And over time, technology will help us on the environmental side. But you know, that happened in Europe, it happened in the United States, it happened in Japan and Korea, and it will happen in China and India is where electricity is going to be generated as those countries begin to get a higher quality of life.
And a lot of what they're looking to generate with is coal. Are our coal miners here going to benefit by having companies like Alpha go out and strike some of these international deals to supply and export coal like some of the Middle Eastern countries are exporting oil?
I definitely think so. I mean, you know, there's no question that we have a situation right now where our biggest competitor on the global basis is Australia. Their production's being totally consumed in the Pacific Basin, which opened up the Atlantic Basin to our U.S. coal. So we're servicing Europe, Western and Eastern Europe, Brazil, South America. So, I mean, that right now, that's where we see the growth. We're a little bit, you know, concerned about how we're going to grow in the United States, but export's going to be the growing industry for coal for probably the next decade.
What does all that mean to the people here in this part of the country that are earning their living from coal, or are we all affected by the money that's earned in the coal fields?
Well, there's no question that the Tri-Cities area is significantly impacted by it. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing that in the Christmas shopping season. I mean, complimentary to Eastman, you know, they were in the forefront technologically of taking coal and converting it to chemicals and gas years ago. That can still be done. You know, I think we'll see that in the future. I think we'll see coal converted not only to gas but liquids as we go into the future for our energy needs. You know, again, I'm a nuclear guy too. I think nuclear ought to be in the mix, but after this situation we recently had in Japan, that's probably not in the horizon for the next 10 years. So it's going to be coal and natural gas for the next decade.
Tell us a little bit. We've talked about the people who get down in the mines and work in those 29 inches or so of space sometimes. What are the inherent risks of being involved in this business, and how do you address that as a manager and an entrepreneur when you're trying to expand a business that has a certain amount of risk to it?
Well, as we've tried to grow, and actually I was on Squawk Box in New York one time, and that's when the industry was really looking for miners, and I explained to them that normally most of the miners we get have a legacy. They either are from a family that was a coal miner, their dad or their grandfather, or they grew up in the region. We really haven't been successful in drawing a lot of people, even with a $73,000 average salary outside the area. And he said, well, I suspect you don't get a lot of people from New York applying for mining jobs. And I said, I'm pretty sure we're not going to recruit anybody from New York. Interview kind of ended after that.
I can see why you might shut that off. You mentioned that there have been layoffs, and some of them still to be executed in the first quarter, that are reducing the workforce. Is that going to put Alpha Natural in a position where it will be competitive in this country and competitive abroad?
Well, I mean, for the business...
And can you convince the people on Wall Street that it's going to be that way?
Well, I mean, that's something you have to do. I mean, the toughest day that I've ever had is when we have an accident and somebody's affected physically and their family is affected. But the second hardest thing that I've ever dealt with are layoffs. And the tough thing about a layoff or a reduction in force, you know, you take that as long as you can. You keep working partial hours or you work reduced hours. But eventually, if you see it's not going to be a short-term event, you have to make the decision for the good of the majority to reduce your force and reduce your costs. But it's so hard to look a good person, man or woman, in the eye and say, look, that's the reality that you have to, when you're in business, that you have to manage those costs. And I'd like for maybe our government to get that message, but you know, that's what it comes down to is, you know, it's money in and money out, and you have to make tough decisions of how you divide that pie, and sometimes you have to do it with a reduction in force and let people move on with their lives. But it's a really difficult thing to do. Next to an accident, it's the hardest day you have.
Does that position Alpha now to be competitive? I mean, is that the reduction going to help? Or?
Oh, it will. I mean, I think where we are with the situation with natural gas and the economy, we've had, you know, for the first time in 35 years, we've had 2 consecutive years of less electricity consumption in the United States than the prior year. And with natural gas, the technology change, they're probably going to take about 10 to 12% of the electricity generation away from coal. there's going to have to be 200 million. Electricity generation takes about 1 billion tons a year historically. That's going down to about 800. So the coal industry is going to have to reduce about 200 million tons, or 20% in the United States, probably for the next 3 to 5 years.
You say 3 to 5 years. Do you think this is something that's cyclical? Will coal catch up as a source, or will that be because of foreign exports? What will make the difference? Will you be competitive with natural gas?
Yeah, natural gas. I mean, right now it's at like, and I'm going to use round numbers, $2 a BCF. So that needs to get to 4 really for them to make money. And at 4, coal is very competitive on a power generation basis. And again, the 2 things that really will drive that is economic activity. Hopefully that comes back in the next 3 to 4 years, and weather. And we had a kind of a perfect negative storm this past few years. We had a very mild winter. We had economic downturn, and then we had natural gas coming up, and that's what's caused it. But it's cyclical. It'll come back. I mean, we've had probably as good a run in the coal industry, the last 8 years as I've ever seen. It used to cycle about every 3, so it's not something that we haven't seen before.
Let's talk a little bit. A lot of the people in this room that are up for awards tonight are entrepreneurial in nature, and what advice would you mention? We've had a tough economy, and we're still kind of sitting in it. What kind of advice would you give to people who want to take on something new, want to try to expand their business or maybe start a new business?
Well, as I said, to me, it's always about people and money, and I'm a very conservative individual by nature, whether it's personally at home or whether in business. And balance sheet is what's so important. I'm debt adverse. Be very cautious about the amount of debt you take on, because even though we're seeing very low interest rates today, we all can probably remember when we saw astronomically different interest rates not that long ago. It can change on you quick, and then you got to manage your cash flow, because if times get tough, you got to have, even I've seen good coal companies that actually went under because they didn't have the working capital to survive the period of the downturn. So you got to manage your balance sheet, be conservative with your debt, and hire good people, and work with those people. And I say this all the time. We all have different skills. None of us are good at everything. So do what you're good at, and get somebody else to do what they're good at, and let those people do their job. And I think that's probably what the success of the people that are candidates for the awards here tonight have already found out, and they will continue to find that out. Never did I anticipate we'd go from 4 people to 14,000. I'm not sure I even recommend it, in all honesty. I won't go into it tonight. I also could debate whether you ever want to be public or not. When the year we turned public was the year that Sarbanes-Oxley came out. We've now been through Dodd-Frank, and it's pretty excruciating what being a public company is today.
Hey, you're still a young man. I've reached the age I can say that. So you're obviously entrepreneurial. I know you said you wanted to spend time with your grandkids now. Are there other ventures that you might be interested in, other things you want to try?
I got to be cautious. Debbie's sitting there, so I got to be careful how I answer this question. Well, I'm still very active. The one thing, I got up at 4:45 for 40 years, so I have no trouble adjusting to getting up at 7, even 8 o'clock from time to time. So that's been the biggest benefit, but still very active. I've still got personal interest in coal mines in Australia. I love that country. Got doing some consulting here, serve on a couple of public boards, and I'm very honored to be the rector at Virginia Tech now, which is chairman of the board of visitors, which does take time. So like 1 week this past summer, we had 22 ball games in 1 week. We didn't make very many of them, but we have a lot of opportunity to spend time. So I call it a transition more than a retirement.
Well, we're certainly happy that you spent time with us tonight. It's been an honor to spend a few minutes with you, and I hope the audience will give a round of applause and appreciation to Mike Quillen. Get this out of the way so we don't quit.